Hello, and welcome back to Practical Faith. Today we're going to be looking into the life of King David, one of the most well-known and beloved characters of all the Bible. We're going to focus on his life, specifically on the messy love life of King David. King David was one of the most important characters in all of Israel's history. When we think about it, Jerusalem was called the City of David. Today, the national flag of Israel features the Star of David. And one of the messianic titles of our Lord Jesus Christ is the Son of David. David is known as authoring more than half of our Psalms. A full life of David is recorded in the scriptures, from the time he is a humble shepherd boy to when he is anointed by Samuel to be king of Israel. One of his most famous episodes is David slaying Goliath. From there, he is elevated into the palace of the king as an acquired musician, serving and calming King Saul. He's proved to be quite the warrior on the battlefield, and he quickly wins the love and the favor of all the people of Israel, much to the displeasure of King Saul, who at this time is a rejected king by the Lord. Trouble unfolds in the life of David, and he ends up fleeing Saul, who's constantly pursuing him, trying to kill him. In the course of time, he is anointed and recognized as the king of Judah and eventually king over all of Israel. David has the distinct designation as being a man after God's own heart. We read that in the scriptures when addressing the fallen King Saul. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be commander over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you. It's repeated in the New Testament. And when he had removed him, referring to King Saul, he raised up for them David as king, to whom also he gave testimony and said, I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, who will do all my will. But what does it mean to be a man after God's own heart? It doesn't necessarily mean that he had a heart like God's. It means that he was after a heart like God's. He was in pursuit of God's heart. We know this because when he sinned, he cries out, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. David was in pursuit of God's heart. David was certainly a very flawed man. He was guilty of a lot of sins and made a lot of mistakes. And we're going to look at some of those today. Now, this is not intended to dog David or to just capitalize on all of his errors. We're exhorted in the scriptures. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the culmination of the ages has come. So if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. As victorious as he was in his public life as a leader, his real struggles in his life occurs within his family. As a father, David left a lot to be desired. We see at the end of his life, on his deathbed, he's giving his last words of direction and encouragement and guidance to his son and successor, Solomon. I am going where everyone on earth must someday go. Take courage and be a man. The problem here is he never really showed him how to do that, how to be a man. And it becomes evident when we look at the things that occurred within his own family. Take, for instance, his eldest son, Ammon. Ammon was his firstborn, who theoretically would have become his successor. And the Bible records somewhat of a disturbing story of how he becomes obsessed with his half-sister, Tamar. We read it in 2 Samuel 13. In the course of time, Ammon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Ammon became so obsessed with his sister Tamar that he made himself ill. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Verse 10. Then Ammon said to Tamar, "Bring the food here into my bedroom so I may eat from your hand." And Tamar took the bread she had prepared and brought it to her brother Ammon in his bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, "Come to bed with me, my sister." "No, my brother," she said to him, "don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing." Verse 14, but he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he raped her. Down in verse 20, her brother Absalom said to her, "Has that Amnon, your brother, been with you? Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." And Tamar lived in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. A horrific story, but what did David do about this? Verse 21, and when King David heard all this, he was furious. And it ends there. It doesn't say he did anything about it. The next verse, and Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad, but hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister Tamar. David didn't do anything, but Absalom never forgot it. And years later, he killed his own brother in response to what he did to his sister. It would later develop into a full-fledged revolt against his father for the very kingdom of Israel. In 2 Samuel 15, we read, a messenger came and told David, "The hearts of the people of Israel are with Absalom." Then David said to all his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, "Come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin on us and put the city to the sword." So he fails with Ammon, and he's failing now with Absalom, as Absalom literally runs him out of his kingdom. The story continues. As King David approached Bahurim, a man from the same clan as Saul's family came out from there. His name was Shimei, son of Gera, and he cursed as he came out. He pelted David and all the king's officials with stones, though all the troops and the special guard were on David's right and left. As he cursed, Shimei said, get out, you murderer, you scoundrel. The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. The Lord has given the kingdom into the hands of your son Absalom. You have come to ruin because you are a murderer." Then Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said to the king, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut off his head." So as David is fleeing the land, this man Shimei, a relative of the fallen king Saul, comes and throws rocks at David and his men. They, of course, want to kill him, but David refrains here. But the king said, "What does this have to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? If he is cursing because the Lord said to him, 'Curse David,' who can ask, 'Why do you do this?'" David said to Abishai and all his officials, "My son, my own flesh and blood, is trying to kill me. How much more than this Benjamite? Leave him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to." It sounds very good, very noble. We're going to get back to Shimei in a while. Another one of his sons, Adonijah, decides at the end of David's life, "I think I'm going to be king." In 1 Kings, the first chapter. Now Adonijah, whose mother was Higgith, put himself forward and said, "I will be king." So he got chariots and horses ready and 50 men to run ahead of him. His father had never rebuked him by asking, "Why do you behave as you do?" He was also very handsome and was born next after Absalom. His father never rebuked him, and it's reasonable to assume he didn't rebuke any of his children. So David had some extreme struggles and difficulties as a father. Paul exhorts Timothy the qualifications for a good pastor and leader. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him. He must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? We are told that it was David's desire to build God a temple. Up to this point, they had worshiped in the tabernacle, a very large tent. It was a noble thought, but God refused him that privilege. We read in 1 Chronicles, "But this word of the Lord came to me, you have shed much blood and have fought many wars. You are not to build a house for my name, because you have shed much blood on the earth in my sight. But you will have a son who will be a man of peace and rest, and I will give him rest from all his enemies on every side. His name will be Solomon, and I will grant Israel peace and quiet during his reign." David was not allowed to build God's temple because he was a man of war and because he shed much blood before God. Well, what does this mean? David was certainly a fierce warrior in the armies of Israel, but was that what disqualified him? There are many such warrior leaders in Israel's history. Joshua was a man of war. Gideon was a man of war. It wasn't so much that David killed during war. It was the people he killed or wanted to kill when he wasn't at war that made him a man of blood. We need only to go to the deathbed again to see the character of David. David is dying, and he's giving his last words to Solomon, his son. 1 Kings chapter 2. "I am going where everyone on the earth must someday go. Take courage and be a man. Observe the requirements of the Lord your God, and follow all his ways. Keep the decrees, commands, regulations, and laws written in the law of Moses, so that you will be successful in all you do and wherever you go. If you do this, then the Lord will keep the promise he made to me. He told me, if your descendants live as they should and follow me faithfully with all their heart and soul, one of them will always sit on the throne of Israel. Now, all this sounds very good, but continue. And there is something else. You know what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, did to me when he murdered my 2 army commanders, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, the son of Jether. He pretended that it was an act of war, but it was done at a time of peace, staining his belt and sandals with innocent blood. Do with him what you think best, but don't let him grow old and go to his grave in peace. David is encouraging his son to kill Joab. Now, Joab was with him from nearly the beginning. He was his main general in the armies. And don't get me wrong, Joab was a character in and of himself. He often disobeyed David and often acted on his own. And without a doubt, he would have been a problem for Solomon as king. But David, on his deathbed, is instructing his son to make sure he kills Joab. He's saying, I'm too old to do it, but you kill him. And it doesn't stop there. Continuing, remember Shimei. Now, do we remember who Shimei was? Shimei was that man that was throwing rocks at David when he was fleeing Israel. Remember Shimei, son of Gera, the man of Baharim in Benjamin. He cursed me with a terrible curse as I was fleeing to Mahanaim. When he came down to meet me at the Jordan River, I swore by the Lord that I would not kill him. But that oath does not make him innocent. You are a wise man, and you will know how to arrange a bloody death for him. It's amazing. David is giving his son a hit list. People that he thinks he should kill as soon as he comes to power. But David's real difficulties occurs in his life with women. In 2 Samuel chapter 3, records the many wives that David had. I'm going to play an audio rendition because some of the names are quite difficult and I don't want to botch it. So let's listen to this passage.
2 Samuel chapter 3, from the New International Version. Verse 2. Sons were born to David in Hebron. His firstborn was Amnon, the son of Ahinoam of Jezreel. His second, Chileab, the son of Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. The third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. The fourth, Adonijah, the son of Haggith. The fifth, Shephatiah, the son of Abital. And the sixth, Ithream, the son of David's wife Eglah. These were born to David in Hebron.
And this is not even including all of his wives. There's one interesting note in this list. From all of these women, Eglah is the only one actually mentioned as being David's wife. So David had several wives, and this isn't even the full list. Right here we see a problem because he's already in violation of the law of Moses. In Deuteronomy 17, Moses, foreseeing and predicting the future kingdom to come, gives this warning. You are about to enter the land the Lord your God is giving you. When you take it over and settle there, you may think we should select a king to rule over us like the other nations around us. If this happens, be sure to select a king, the man the Lord your God chooses. You must appoint a fellow Israelite. He may not be a foreigner. The king must not build up a large stable of horses for himself or send his people to Egypt to buy horses, for the Lord has told you, you must never return to Egypt. The king must not take many wives for himself, because they will turn his heart away from the Lord, and he will not accumulate large amounts of wealth in silver or gold for himself. If Israel was to have a king, there were 3 requirements for him. Do not have an excess of horses and chariots. Do not have excess wealth. Do not have multiple wives. David is violating at least one of these right here with multiple wives. Solomon would violate all 3 of these requirements. But the story continues. After he left Hebron, David took more concubines and wives in Jerusalem, and more sons and daughters were born to him. When David had to flee the kingdom, the king set out with his entire household following him, but he left 10 concubines to take care of the palace. David had many wives. Most of them we don't know anything about, but we do have details on 3 of them. His first wife was Michal. His second wife was Abigail. Later on in his life, Bathsheba became another wife. These are the only 3 wives that we have any kind of details about. One interesting thing is, these 3 wives at one time or another were married to other men. We're going to start from the later wife, Bathsheba, and work our way back. Bathsheba, without a doubt, perhaps the most famous of David's wives. And it occurs during a significant time in David's life. In 2 Samuel, we read, in the spring, at the time when the kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. Well, right here we see the beginning of a problem. There's a war going on, but David stays home that day. One of the reasons for Israel wanting a king and having a king was for a king to go before them into battle. Back in 1 Samuel, the 8th chapter, the people are protesting to the prophet Samuel. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and go out before us and fight our battles. David is not showing up for the one job that he was hired to do, to lead his people in battle. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. And David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. So David knows that this woman is married, and married to one of his soldiers. Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness, Then she went back home. So David has committed adultery. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, I am pregnant. Now David has a problem. What does he do with the sin that he just committed? He calls for her husband from the battlefield, gives him a furlough from the war that he's fighting in to go and be with his wife so that he can blame the pregnancy on Uriah. Well, that doesn't work because Uriah has more integrity than David and does not see it fit to be with his wife while his comrades are out on the battlefield where David should have been fighting the war. David doesn't stop there, but gets him drunk to again get him to sleep with his wife so that he can pass the blame on Uriah. And when that doesn't work, he takes it a step further. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it, he wrote, put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fierce. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die. So David sets him up to be killed in battle. Then after he's dead, watch how he responds. David told the messenger, say this to Joab, don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it. Say this to encourage Joab. David's heart is cold and callous. His response is, tell Joab, people die. Don't be upset. This happens all the time. This is not the young man that we knew who sang the praises of God. David is now a corrupt leader. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. And David is about to give an account for his sin. Nathan the prophet comes to him using a symbolic story and rebukes him with the parable. Let's listen to an audio rendition of that event.
2 Samuel 12. The Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, there were 2 men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over, because he did such a thing and had no pity. Then Nathan said to David, you are the man. This is what the Lord the God of Israel says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you, and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you all Israel and Judah, and if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites.
Now, in this parable, we have several characters that are somewhat easy to identify. There is a rich man, a poor man, and a ewe lamb. The rich man clearly represents David. The poor man represents Uriah. The ewe lamb symbolizes Bathsheba. But there is a fourth character in this story. The fourth character is identified as a traveler. We know who the other characters are and who they represent. Who is the fourth character? Who is the traveler? The traveler represents David's urges, his desires, his lust. And we all have travelers that come by from time to time. David, who has plenty, steals another man's possessions to use to satisfy his urges and his lust. David is confronted with his sin. David is now paying the price. But David finds grace and mercy. But where sin abounded, grace did much more abound. Proverbs tells us, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, as a father the son he delights in." Blessed is the one whom God corrects, and do not despise the discipline of the Almighty. So David survives his fall from grace and marries Bathsheba. Now, what about Bathsheba? Does she share in any of this guilt? I've heard over the years, well, it takes two to tango. What was she doing up on the roof bathing in the first place? Isn't she just as guilty as David? It's interesting that it's only in the recent years in our society that we've become to recognize the dynamics of sexual abuse and what happens when women fall prey to corrupt men in power. David is the king of Israel. He is her husband's boss. Who is she supposed to report him to? Bathsheba is not an active participant in this sin. Bathsheba is a victim. She doesn't share his guilt, but does share his consequences. Her husband is murdered, and her child is dead. This was a stain on David's life, and it was one that followed him throughout his life. We read of what might be seen as a eulogy. For David had done what was right in the eyes of the Lord, and had not failed to keep any of the Lord's commands all the days of his life, except in the case of Uriah the Hittite. That sin would overshadow him. And it's interesting that Bathsheba is always acknowledged as Uriah's wife. 2 Samuel 12, after Nathan had gone home, the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife had borne to David, and he became ill. Even in the New Testament, in the record of the lineage of Jesus, and Jesse, the father of David, was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. Then there's Abigail. Abigail is his second wife. The story of Abigail is perhaps one of the most romantic episodes of David's life. He comes across Abigail when he was on the run from King Saul. David had a band of brothers and people around him. And one of the ways they made a living for themselves while they were on the run, they would serve as somewhat of a protective force for local farmers. They would watch over other people's properties and guard them against bandits and robbers. As a result, they often rewarded them with food and supplies. One of those people was a man by the name of Nabal. The name Nabal means foolish. Nabal was a rich man, and he was married to Abigail. 1 Samuel 25, his name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband was surly and mean in his dealings. He was a Calebite. Now, it's interesting here, Abigail is the only woman that is said was both intelligent and beautiful. David makes a request of Nabal for some food and supplies in recognition of the unofficial service that his men had provided him. Nabal responded with an insult. Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I have slaughtered for my sharers and give it to men coming from who knows where?" Well, David is not happy with this response at all. David said to his men, "Each of you strap on your sword." So they did, and David strapped his on as well. About 400 men went up with David, while 200 stayed with the supplies. David, because he has been insulted, is ready to wipe out Nabal and his entire household. One of the servants told Abigail, Nabal's wife, "David sent messengers from the wilderness to give our master his greeting, but he hurled insults at them." Now, it's interesting that the servant doesn't go to the master of the house, Nabal. He goes to Abigail, clearly recognizing that she'll know what to do about this. Now, think it over and see what you can do, because disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. He is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. So Abigail goes to intercept David from his death mission. She fell at his feet and said, "Pardon your servant, my lord, and let me speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say." "Please pay no attention, my lord, to that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. And as for me, your servant, I did not see the men my lord sent. Please forgive your servant's presumption. The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my lord, because you fight the Lord's battles, and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. When the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised concerning him, and has appointed him ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed, or of having avenged himself. And when the Lord your God has brought my Lord success, remember your servant." Abigail, in her wisdom and courage, not only saves her family and her household from David, but saves David from committing a massacre. David refrains, and shortly after this, Nabal dies. His servants went to Carmel and said to Abigail, David has sent us to you to take you to become his wife. And he marries Abigail. Now we come to his first wife, Michal, which I think is one of the most interesting of his marriages. David is rising in favor with all the people of Israel at this time, as he's now living in the palace with King Saul. Saul is given over to jealousy and envy and develops a growing hatred for David. 1 Samuel 18 we read, and from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. Now Saul has two daughters. The oldest one is named Merab, and the youngest is Michal. Saul tries to marry off Merab to David, not because he cares about David, or his daughter for that matter, but he wants to use his daughter to set David up to be killed in battle, basically by putting a target on his back. Well, David is not interested in marrying Merab and refuses. 1 Samuel 18, verse 20. Now Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David, and when they told Saul about it, he was pleased. I will give her to him, he thought, so that she may be a snare to him, and so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. So Saul said to David, now you have a second opportunity to become my son-in-law. Well, David agrees, but Saul tops it off with a near impossible task that David has to go out and kill 100 Philistines for the price of his daughter's hand. David goes out and not only kills 100, he kills 200 and wins the prize for Michal. Well, things didn't get any better from there. Saul's demonic anger only grew worse, and now he's literally attempting to assassinate David in his house. Michal, who is in love with David, helps him escape the hand of Saul. And now David is on the run, hiding and dodging from Saul. Well, Saul is not happy with his daughter Michal, and in that time, he gives Michal to another man, Paltiel, in marriage. Now, the scriptures don't tell us why Saul did this. Did he do it to punish Michal for helping David? Was it an act of practicality? David is now a fugitive. Did he do it so that his daughter would be provided for from another husband? We simply don't know. But Michal is gone from that point, and we don't hear from her again until years later. Saul is dead. David is now king. And in one occasion, he returns the Ark of the Covenant that had been missing for a long time and brings it back into the city of David. David is rejoicing in the streets, and he's dancing before the Lord. He dances so hard, he dances his clothes off of him. And who is in the window watching this but Michal? In 2 Samuel chapter 6, wearing a linen ephod, David was dancing before the Lord with all his might, while he and all Israel were bringing the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sound of trumpets. As the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, watched from a window. And when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. Earlier we read, now Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David. Now she despises him. She started out in love. Now she hates him. What happened? How many marriages, relationships do we know that start out in love and end up in hatred? Well, what happened here? What went wrong? Where did the love go? Well, there's a couple of key events that happened along the way here. King Saul is dead and David is on the rise. We read, the war between the house of Saul and the house of David lasted a long time. David grew stronger and stronger, while the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. While the kingdom of Israel is technically not a divided kingdom as it would become, there is certainly a civil war going on between Saul's family and David. Saul's oldest son was Ishbosheth, and Ishbosheth decided he is the rightful king, the replacement of Saul. Abner was Saul's chief general over the army and the personal hitman for Saul. Well, Ishbosheth one day accuses Abner of sleeping with Saul's concubine. Up at this point, we didn't know that Saul even had a concubine. We don't know if it's true, when it happened. Did he do it while Saul was alive? Did he do it after Saul had died? Did he do it at all? We don't know, but Abner is not happy with the accusation. He's so insulted by this accusation that he decides, I'm going to go and pledge my allegiance to David. David, of course, welcomes the help of Abner, but has a request for his service. In the 3rd chapter of 2 Samuel, then Abner sent messengers on his behalf to say to David, whose land is it? Make an agreement with me, and I will help you bring all Israel over to you. Good, David said, I will make an agreement with you, but I demand one thing of you. Do not come into my presence unless you bring Michal, daughter of Saul, when you come to see me. David decides he wants his wife back. Then David sent messages to Ishbosheth, son of Saul, demanding, give me my wife Michal. Why? Because I love her, whom I betrothed to myself for the price of 100 Philistine foreskins. So Ishbosheth gave orders and had her taken away from her husband Paltiel, son of Laish. Her husband, however, went out with her, weeping behind her all the way to Bahurim. Then Abner said to him, go back home. So he went back. David says, I want Michal, not because I miss her, not because I'm in love with her, but because I paid for her. This is the first time he even bothered calling for Michal. Even though she helped him to escape Saul, he never called her. He called for Bathsheba, he called for Abigail, but he never calls for Michal. Now the scene comes and there is a domestic quarrel going on. And like most domestic arguments, there's blame on every side. When David returned home to bless his household, Michal, daughter of Saul, came to meet him and said, how the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, going around half naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would. Michal doesn't like that David is dancing half naked before a bunch of women. We've often seen Michal's response here as representing those who would criticize the way you worship. You know the type. They observe how you express your worship in a church service, and they're thinking all of that ain't necessary. You don't have to make all that noise. We don't do that here. Michal represents the critic. David is a worshiper, but Michal has no appreciation for the way he's worshiping God. People who don't agree with your goals will have problems with your decisions. But what about David? David said to Michal, it was before the Lord who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will celebrate before the Lord. Now, why does David have to say that? What David is saying is, you're upset because the Lord chose me instead of your father, because the Lord chose me instead of your brother. Was that necessary? Is that relevant to what's going on? He continues, I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by these slave girls you spoke of, I will be held in honor. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and you tried to express something that happened that offended you, and the response you got was, well, I'm sorry you feel that way? This is what David is saying here. I'm sorry you feel this way, but this is me. This is how I am. This is how I roll. And then he continues by bringing the slave girls into it, basically saying, you may not like it, but those women out there are digging me. You can be right with all the wrong intentions. The story ends here. Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death. Now, I find this interesting because many have taken this to mean that Michal was barren. But the scriptures does not say that she was barren. It does not say the Lord shut up her womb. It says she never had any children. This is significant because if that's so, it means David purposed not to let her have any children. It has nothing to do with love because, as David certainly illustrated, you don't have to love someone to have sex with them. But David doesn't give her any children. Why? Because she's the daughter of Saul. If Michal were to have a child, a son, he could rightfully be acknowledged as the son of Saul. And David is not going to have that. So it appears to me that David purposed to not let her have any children. Why does Michal now despise David? These are some of the things that may have contributed to this change of heart from Michal of loving David to now hating David. But there's something else here. Remember, she was given to another man. And when she was taken from that man, we read that he followed her down the road crying and weeping that they were taking her away. And that means Michal has come to know what it is to be loved, what it is to be wanted from somebody else, what it is to be wanted from another man. And when you know what it is to be loved by God, it will change you. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That's why Jesus came. Jesus came to show us what it is to be loved by God. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. We love because he first loved us.
People get ready, Jesus is